Guys, welcome to a classic Western movie review of 1955's Run for Cover, starring James Cagney, Ernest Borgnine and Viveca Lindfors. Now, this was directed by Nicholas Ray and sat sandwiched between his masterworks Rebel Without a Cause and Johnny Guitar. Now, Run for Cover is not as widely recognised as some of the other Westerns from this era, but I'd argue that it still stands out for its exploration of moral dilemmas, the consequences of violence and the struggles of its central characters. Now, this sees Cagney and his pal mistaken initially for train robbers, shot at by the sheriff and his posse, but then cleared and hired as lawmen, and that is before the past comes a-calling. Let's take a look.
You mean you're really the sheriff?
Mm-hmm.
And in church?
Just do what he says. Everybody keep quiet.
Right.
So, Run for Cover is set in the American West during the late 19th century and follows Matt and Davey, played by James Cagney and John Derek, two individuals who find themselves caught in a violent misunderstanding. Now, after an incident that sees the pair fired upon after being mistaken for train robbers, John Derek's Davey is shot in the leg and must recuperate at the home of the Swedish immigrants, the Swensons, specifically the lovely Helga Swenson, played by Viveca Lindfors. Now, once the townfolk realise Cagney and Derek are stand-up guys, they offer Cagney the sheriff's badge, and as he's already fallen for Helga and found a makeshift home on her farm, he accepts taking young Davey as his deputy. Now, this being classic Western territory, you know that Cagney's character is a man with a past, but maybe not the one that you'll initially imagine. And in here lies one of the themes of the movie, and one that would crop up in a few Westerns of the time, of things not always being as they seem, jumping to conclusions and mob mentality. This, of course, being the era of the Red Scare and the general hysteria over perceived threats and infiltration by communists. Now, Run for Cover is not a traditional Western in the sense of being purely about lawmen and outlaws or shootouts in wide open spaces. Rather, it delves into the psychological and emotional toll of violence. It definitely offers a critique of the glorification of violence.
Yeah, but this man was an outlaw.
Wasn't your job to judge him. We have courts and juries for that.
What do you want me to do, be a hero? Shoot somebody? Maybe get shot myself?
That was the job, son.
Cagney's character embodies a man who has been shaped by a history of violence, and his attempts to escape it are thwarted. He has a yearning for redemption and a desire to live peacefully, but both are complicated by Davey's near hero worship of him. So there's echoes of misguided admiration and the destructive consequences of hero worship throughout the film, and these come to a head when Cagney's past literally rides into town to rob the local bank on a Sunday when all the residents are in church, something that sets into motion a couple of plot twists that highlight the real villains of the piece.
Matt Dow.
Hello, Gentry.
I didn't know you was in these parts. Or to cut you in, for old time's sake.
I wouldn't have taken it.
Now, James Cagney, who didn't make many Westerns, only a few I think, works well here and brings his usual intensity to his portrayal of a man trying to outrun his past. His face conveys that inner turmoil of a man who has seen too much violence to believe in the simplicity of good versus evil. Now, Cagney never got enough respect for his acting, as far as I'm concerned, but watch him closely and you'll see him effortlessly switch between emotions without really having to oversell anything. Here playing, as we discover, an ex-con. He's a man who tragically lost his son and his wife, a guy who wants to do the right thing and now has a tough time getting along in a town full of hypocrites. Now, John Derek, who I don't know a great deal about, to be honest. He played Joshua in the Ten Commandments, but outside of that, I'm not too sure. But here playing Davey, he mixes those smooth good looks with a sinister streak running just below the surface. He's quite young and impressionable, and he and Cagney have a kind of mentor and pupil thing going on, with Cagney playing the reluctant guide, and it's through their interactions that the film's central theme of the corrupting influence of violence is eventually explored. Now, you're kind of on the fence about Davey and his true colours for a chunk of the movie, but things eventually do become clear.
Maybe somebody else could have found a way to get to you before it was too late. You had the whole town pulling for you, but you didn't care who you hurt.
Viveca Lindfors, who I only recently realised played the old lady at the beginning of 1994's Stargate, here plays a pivotal role as Anna, who becomes romantically involved with Cagney's Matt. While her role is not as prominent as Cagney's or Derek's, she's definitely a grounding presence in the film. Her character is the example of those homesteaders who came from all over the world to set up home in America. She tells Cagney at one point that her and her father travelled as far as they could afford and set up home. Now, I won't say too much about Ernest Borgnine's involvement in the plot. Suffice to say that he's here as a no-gooder. Borgnine had also appeared in Nicholas Ray's Johnny Guitar the previous year and also played a nasty in that same year's Bad Day at Black Rock. Now, the film's director Nicholas Ray, though perhaps better known for his work in melodramas and film noir, directs Run for Cover with a pretty steady hand. He took a more intimate approach to the Western genre, I think, focusing more on the psychological and emotional dynamics between characters rather than the typical bar fights, bullets and daring do. Now, Run for Cover is only a 90-minute movie, but Ray's pacing is deliberate and he makes sure there are moments of reflection and internal conflict, which is an arty-farty way of saying that he gives the characters room to breathe, to stop for a minute and actually speak to one another.
I'm not trying to. All I want to do is give him a chance. Make him feel like he's doing a man's job.
You think putting a gun in his hand will cure what is in his heart?
What do you mean?
Now, the cinematography by Lee Garms is definitely a noteworthy aspect of Run for Cover. Filmed on location in Silverton, Colorado, it has quite an outdoorsy feel to it, which is an odd thing to say perhaps, but I feel that if Ray could shoot outdoors, then he did, and use the studio only for interior work. And one of the quirkier aspects of the film is its finale, filmed on location at the Aztec Ruins National Monument in New Mexico, which is a great location, and I would have loved to have seen more of the movie there. Now, it's been documented by Cagney himself, amongst others, that Run for Cover was re-edited after Nicholas Ray left the scene, and that a lot of the director's flourishes were essentially removed, which is, of course, a huge shame. There are some odd bits of pacing in the film, though, and it does jump about a bit at times. And as I touched upon, Run for Cover may not be as widely known as other westerns of the 1950s. I mean, the 50s produced some of the greatest ever made, but it deserves more attention, if not just for Cagney's performance, combined with a thoughtful script and, as always, solid direction from Nicholas Ray. And these things elevate the film into something just a bit more than another cookie-cutter entry in the western genre. Its heroes are flawed. Its villains sometimes heroic. There's an interesting alternative version of this movie that focuses more on John Derek's young Davey, young, angry and lashing out violently at the authority around him. There's hints of it here, of course, but Ray would wait another year to tell that story with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. In Run for Cover, he was just warming up. Go check it out.
Mister, we owe you an apology.
I'll tell the boy. He'll be real touched.